Hey guys, welcome back. So today we are doing another true crime get ready with me video. These are the videos where I basically sit down, put on a full face of makeup, and tell you guys about a true crime case that has interested me, that I've just feel compelled to talk about. They're usually crazy and usually old, because I kind of have like a thing for like old crime. I don't know why, it's kind of weird. But yeah, so these videos make no sense, but they are inspired by Bailey Sarian over on her YouTube channel. She is amazing and weird and lovely, and she has a pit bull, and I love her. So definitely go check her out. She is the only other person that I found on YouTube that does this type of video, and so of course someone had to copy her eventually, right? So let's just go ahead and dive right in. I do have my notes here, so I'm sorry if I like look down. This case actually has like a lot of information. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So today's case is on the Springfield Three. This is a missing persons case from 1992, and it is the case of 47-year-old Cheryl Levitt, her 19-year-old daughter Suzanne Streeter, and Suzanne's 18-year-old friend Stacy McCall. All three women went missing from Cheryl's home on July 7th, 1992. Now, Cheryl was a single mother. She worked as a cosmetologist at a local salon, and she loved her job, and she loved Suzanne. Like, they had a really great relationship. They were really like close, and there weren't like a lot of issues between them. It wasn't like a troubled relationship or anything. And Cheryl actually shared her love of cosmetology so much that Suzanne actually had plans to become a cosmetologist later in her life, like after she finished college and everything. Cheryl was recently divorced, kind of. She had been divorced for about 3 years from her second husband, and her and Suzanne, who usually liked to be called Susie, had actually just moved into a new house. So they were really excited about this like new start for them, as well as the fact that just the day before all three women went missing on July 6th, Susie and Stacy actually graduated from high school at the local high school. So it was a really kind of exciting, promising future type of time for the girls. Suzanne and Stacy did have plans to go on to college and finish their education and everything, but they kind of wanted to take the summer after high school to just relax and enjoy life and goof off and just not have to worry about anything before college came and they had to like be real adults and everything. That night, the night of graduation on July 6th, they actually had plans with another friend, Janelle, to drive into Branson, Missouri, which was just a couple hours away, and they were going to stay at a hotel and then hit up the local water park there in Branson. Unfortunately, for a bunch of different reasons, the girls ended up canceling the hotel part of their plans, and they ended up going back to Janelle's house. However, when they got there, they were actually surprised by a large party of Janelle's friends and family that were they had driven from all over the state, some even out of state, to surprise Janelle and celebrate with her and her friends the fact that she just graduated high school, basically. Now, Stacy and Susie weren't exactly in the mood for that kind of party. They actually found it really overwhelming just being around that many people, so they decided to go ahead and head out, and they went back to Suzanne's house, and this would have been around 2 a.m.-ish. There was a confirmed sighting of the two girls who drove separate cars to Suzanne's house around 2:30 a.m. and police do think that they made it to Susie's house without any sort of problems. so they don't think that's where their issues started in the night. Earlier on that night of the 6th, Cheryl was talking to a friend on her phone at home about renovating a cabinet and just life and everything, and that was around 11:30, and unfortunately that was the last time that anybody heard from Cheryl. Now, the morning of July 7th, Janelle called Suzanne's house multiple times, trying to see if they were awake, if they were ready for her to come over and everything, and she never received an answer. So around 9 a.m., Janelle calls her boyfriend Mike and has him take her over to their house, thinking that they're just going to, you know, get over there, the girl's going to be awake, and they'll just head into Branson. So when they get there, they pull up, and everything seems very normal. All 3 cars that are supposed to be there are there, parked in the driveway. Nothing really seems out of place until they get to the front door, where they notice that the glass case around the light bulb on the front porch is actually shattered all over the porch, and the front door is actually ajar. The house had a normal door and then a screened-in door, and the normal door was like cracked open, which they found a little odd. So they decided to head on inside, and this is where they're met with a very strange scene because it looked normal, honestly. All 3 girls' items were still there. Their purses, their makeup, their clothing, their IDs. Everything was there. The beds appeared slept in. The police later found washcloths in the bathroom that had like remnants of taken off makeup. So it basically just appeared like the girls got home around 2:30ish, took off their makeup, got ready for bed, went to bed, and then disappeared basically out of thin air. The only things that seemed odd when they went in were the fact that the TV was left on, but it wasn't on a channel, it was just on that static, and it was actually quite loud, like it was turned up, so that was kind of weird. And they also found Suzanne's family dog Cinnamon, who was like visibly upset and agitated to the point where he would not calm down unless he was in Janelle's arms. So he was obviously like very upset about something, but again, the house was just looked normal. There was no signs of like a struggle or a break-in or anything, so it was very, very odd. Janelle and Mike don't really think too much of the situation. They kind of assume maybe the girls woke up early and headed into Branson by themselves and they were just going to meet up with them. They weren't really sure what was happening, but they decided not to worry about it really. So they decide to head out, and like a scary movie, as they're walking out the front door, the telephone rings. Janelle thought maybe this person on the phone was maybe one of the girls, maybe it was someone who knew where they were. She just kind of thought maybe she would gain a little bit more information from this caller, so she went ahead and rushed to pick it up. However, when she picked it up, all she heard was an anonymous male just spewing lewd, disgusting comments about women into the phone. She didn't know who it was, but she was horrified by the things he was saying, so she immediately hung up, and as soon as she did that, he called right back and started right back up where he was cut off. She hung up a second time, and they both just like left the house very, very quickly. They were done. They were just like, we're getting out of here. For some reason, though, they didn't decide to say anything to police or Stacy's mom or anything. Like, nothing was said at this point. At the same time, Stacy's mom, Janice, was across town with her older daughter, Lisa, who she had made plans with that day to go into town, pick up Lisa's wedding dress, get some lunch, just kind of hang out. She thought that Stacy was still at Janelle's house. However, later a family friend or relative, not really sure which, told her that the girls actually left Janelle's house and went back to Susie's house. Janice was obviously upset with Stacy for being irresponsible and not telling her where she was, but she decided to not really worry about it too much. I mean, she was 18, she just graduated high school, she was just kind of giving her a chance, thinking maybe she just, you know, forgot, skipped this one time, wasn't really a big deal. She just decided not to worry about it, really. So Janice and Lisa just go on their merry way, doing the things that they had planned to do that day. And it wasn't until much later when Janice realized that they had gone the entire day without hearing from Stacy, and she got a little worried, so she decided to track down Suzanne's new address. Like I said, it was their new house, and they hadn't had time to give everybody the new address and phone number and everything. So she tracked down the information and went over there herself, thinking they were still there. Now, Janice didn't know this at the time, but it actually, when she got there, it was almost exactly 12 hours since Janelle and Mike had left Suzanne's house, and Janice was immediately unnerved by the situation. She found it much, much more odd than Janelle and Mike really did. So she actually immediately went to phone the police. Now, this was obviously 1992, and cell phones weren't really a thing at this point, so she had to use the landline that was in Cheryl's house. And when she did this, she actually inadvertently deleted some of the voicemails that were left on the machine, and unfortunately this actually did contain a few voicemails from the previous anonymous lewd comment caller, which a lot of people online, as well as the police, do think that this is kind of a key piece of information that they are missing. There's actually quite a bit of debate online of whether or not having this information really would have helped, but police do kind of feel like it's a piece of information that might have maybe helped, at least, you know, help them rule something out, at least. So Janice calls the police, and they immediately file a missing persons report on the girls. However, it is fairly late at night at this point, so they tell her to go ahead and come in the next morning, and they'll kind of give some more information and really start the investigation. However, on this phone call, they also asked Janice to bring with her in the next morning a copy of Stacy's dental records, which really kind of upset Janice because she felt like that meant that they were immediately going into this looking for a body, and that just, like, she couldn't handle that idea. So rather than going home, getting some sleep, and regrouping in the morning with the police, she actually stayed up all night long making missing persons posters with all three girls' pictures on them. I'll pop a few on the screen here so you can see. They were really well made. She spent a lot of time doing them, and this eventually became like a community-wide initiative. Actually, eventually the entire state came together, and they ended up handing out over 40,000 missing persons posters over the entire state of Missouri, which is a lot. So days go by without any real leads until, however, a local waitress comes forward saying that she remembers seeing all three girls in the diner that she works at sometime between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. the morning that the girls are supposed to have disappeared, July 7th. Police immediately dive into this lead. It's their first real lead, and they actually round up all of the patrons that they can find that were there that morning. However, none of the other patrons are able to corroborate this sighting, and they have to move on from this lead because they cannot confirm any of this waitress's information. So it's at this point that police start looking into the girls' backgrounds, trying to see if they could find someone that might have motive to want to hurt them, might have information. They're just they're looking for something at this point. And this is when they find out about Cheryl's oldest child, Bart Streeter. He was 9 years older than Suzanne, and the family had a rocky past, to say the least. 10 years earlier, Bart was actually kicked out of the family home because he had some major alcohol abuse issues, and Suzanne would have been in like elementary school at this point, and Cheryl really had to make a tough decision, but she had to think about the well-being of her young child at this point, and she just wasn't going to let her be around that kind of situation, so she ended up kicking Bart out, and it was a good few years before they reconnected. However, they did reconnect in 1991. Bart had recently moved back to the area because he had broken up with his longtime girlfriend, and the family fully reconnected, and it wasn't long before Suzanne and Bart were just like brother and sister again. Like, no time had passed, and they actually made plans to get an apartment together, which they ended up doing. However, because of Bart's recent heartbreak of his breaking up with his girlfriend and everything, his alcohol abuse issues were even worse than they were before, and this actually ended up becoming a very physically violent situation for Suzanne, and so she ended up having to make the really hard choice to pack up and move home to her mother's house. Police did rule Bart out fairly quickly. They didn't really release any information on why they think that he didn't do it, but they did rule him out. And it's at this point that police uncover information about Suzanne's ex-boyfriend, Dustin Reckler, and one of his friends, Michael Clay. Suzanne had recently broken up with Dustin due to the fact that she found out that Dustin and Michael had broken into a local mausoleum and stolen a bunch of gold teeth off the bodies and pawned them. So they were in a lot of legal trouble, and Suzanne wanted nothing to do with it. She was not going to be a part of that. So she very quickly broke up with Dustin, and she was actually set to speak at their trial against them. In the days after their disappearance, Michael Clay was actually overheard saying that he hoped all three women were dead. So there was definitely some animosity there. There were some issues, and while the boys had alibis, their whereabouts were never truly confirmed, and so they are still considered suspects to this day in all three girls' disappearance. A few days later, a new tip comes in that makes this case odd, takes it definitely for a turn. In the early hours on the morning that the girls disappeared, a nearby neighbor was sitting on her porch when she said at around 6:30 a.m. she saw a peculiar van, in her words, that she didn't recognize as belonging to anybody in the neighborhood, sitting near the girls' home. She said it was a Dodge panel van, and it was either the 1960s or 1970s model with a greenish silver hue. She also said that she saw a young woman in the driver's seat who looked visibly upset, and she said she heard a man's voice say the words, "Back out slowly and don't do anything stupid." Unfortunately, this tip was not phoned in right away. The woman said that she didn't think to say anything because this was before the police had broadcast over local news that the women were missing, and so she didn't think that far into it. However, can I just say, I don't care if I know that someone's missing. If I heard someone say, "Back out slowly and don't do something stupid," and a woman that's visibly upset in a van that I don't recognize, like, I'm gonna call the police, even if I don't know that someone's missing. Sorry, that's just common sense, I think. But anyways, she did, however, say later, after the information was made public that the women were missing, that she did believe that the girl that she saw was Suzanne Streeter. Police actually found this tip to be incredibly reliable, so they actually ended up buying the similar style van to what the woman said she saw. They painted it the correct color, and they put it outside the police station with a note on it saying, you know, if you recognize this van, if you have information about someone who might have this van, contact us. And I thought this was crazy, honestly. When I read this, I was like, dang, like, that's a lot of effort to put in, right? But this actually worked for them. A local paperboy came forward saying that he saw a very, very similar van in the neighborhood. However, he said that the van that he saw was brown. Now, this could be explained because the paperboy did his drop-offs really, really early in the morning and like the dark hours. So that could definitely explain the color difference. However, this lead soon fizzled and they couldn't really get any more information. Then, completely due to Janice's relentless pursuit of information, a caller adds a new name to the police's suspect list. Janice had been pushing for national coverage of her daughter's case. She was sure that somebody out there, no matter how far away they were, would have information. And a man from Florida ended up calling in, saying that police should be looking into a man called Robert Craig Cox. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of back information about Robert Craig Cox because I think his history is very, very important to this story. The caller that called in the tip on him was actually the brother of a woman named Sharon Zellers, who had unfortunately been murdered at 19 by Robert Craig Cox when she was leaving her work at Disney World late one night. At the time, Robert was in town with his parents, actually celebrating the fact that he had recently graduated from basic training to become a Army Ranger. He was in a nearby hotel when his parents wanted to stay in and go to sleep, but he wanted to go out and keep partying, so he did that. His parents said later that night he burst into the room covered in blood and part of his tongue had been bitten off. They quickly took him to the ER where he told the nurses that he bit the piece of tongue off. However, they quickly realized that that wasn't possible just by like the slant of the bite. It was impossible for him to have done it to himself. A few hours later, the body of Sharon Zellers was actually found just a few hundred feet from Robert's hotel. And while police were absolutely sure that Robert was the one that did this, they couldn't really do anything about it because unfortunately DNA testing at this point was non-existent. I mean, it was 1978. Like, that was not happening then. So unfortunately they had to let him walk on that charge. After this, Robert moved to California, where in 1985 he was charged with the assault and abduction of 2 different women, and he was actually convicted on these charges. After this, he was actually sent back to Florida to face charges for Sharon Zeller finally, and he was convicted there as well and sentenced to life in prison, which, hallelujah. However, this was very short-lived. It was overturned very quickly due, again, to the lack of DNA evidence. And it's at this point that he moves to Springfield in 1992, just months before the girls went missing. Now, Robert had many jobs while living in Springfield, one of which was as an underground utility worker, which a lot of people think could be the key to this case, because this would have given him a lot of access to a lot of different people's homes. I mean, if a utility worker comes to your house and says, hey, I need to do this, this, and this, are you really gonna tell them no? Especially in the 90s, I mean, people were a lot more trusting at that point, so that was definitely something that I feel like a lot of people online latched onto. However, another one of the jobs that he had was actually as a mechanic at a local used car lot. Wow, that was hard to get out. And this was actually the same lot that Stacy McCall's father worked at. Now, Robert was, of course, interviewed. Police jumped on this caller tip immediately. They were not going to let this get away. This was, months after the girls went missing, and they were just desperately looking for something to go off of. However, Robert's then girlfriend gave him an airtight alibi, saying that she was with him all night long. He never left their home, and well, that was that, basically. However, in 1995, after they broke up, she recants this alibi due to the fact that she finds out that after moving to Texas, Robert is arrested again for holding a gun on a 12-year-old girl. She told the police that basically he threatened her that night and told her that if the police ever talked to her about the 3 women's disappearance, that she was to say exactly what he told her to say, and there were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So after holding a gun on a 12-year-old girl, Robert is sent to prison for life, and he actually ends up telling police that he knows the girls are dead, and he knows that they are buried very, very close to Springfield. However, he refuses to tell police any information until his mother is dead, basically because he doesn't want to cause her any more pain or embarrassment. While police do think this is a fairly solid lead for them, they are skeptical just because of the fact that they worry that he might be just looking for attention, looking for a way to mess with police now that he can no longer hurt people. He's basically just trying to psychologically hurt people from prison. So they haven't really been able to move much on the Robert idea, but he is still sitting in prison, and hopefully one day he will come forward with the information that he says he has. Another tip eventually comes in saying that the women are buried under the parking lot of a nearby hospital that was actually under construction at the time that the girls went missing. So in 2010, I believe it was Crime Watch Daily came to Springfield to do a segment on the case and try and, bring new light to them and everything. They interviewed Stacy's mom, who was just heartbreaking to listen to. I'll link her interview down below. She is just still to this day distraught over her young daughter going missing. But when this happened, a local reporter actually found a mechanical engineer and paid him with her own money to come out to the hospital parking lot because he actually specialized in underground radar searching. And she paid him with her own money, which I just think is amazing. Like, she just wanted this to happen, and had him test the parking lot. And he actually found 3 human-sized anomalies. And while he can't say that they are bodies, he has said that they're very similar to anomalies that he's found in graveyards. So this is probably the most frustrating part of this case for me. It genuinely makes me angry. Police still to this day, 9 years later, refuse to even order ground samples of this parking lot. And this is even after the engineer offered to pay for them to be done himself. This reporter and this engineer are literally, like, the heroes of this case, because they are the only people that are, well, that and Janice, 3 people that are really doing something about it, and none of them are the police. Anyways, calm down, Alyssa. Dozens of petitions have actually popped up online, basically begging the Springfield Police to move on this information, order ground samples, do something, basically. Officers on this case have said that they refuse to disrupt the busy hospital that this is based in, simply due to the fact that the original caller tip that this information came from, the original caller that said that the bodies were under the parking lot, was found out to be a basically debunked online sleuth who called himself a psychic. And so because of that, the information isn't viable, which the original information might have come from a crazy person online. However, they have real proof that there is something happening underneath that parking lot from real people who are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and they still refuse to order ground samples. That is the most infuriating information I have ever read. And I know that this shit happens a lot on these types of cases, and I think it is despicable when police are just so blinded by what I can only assume is their own ego for the fact that they didn't find this information, that they just refuse to move on it. And obviously that's my own opinion, so don't drag me for saying something that isn't proven, but I mean, what else can you chalk it up to besides them just being stupid? Anyways, I'm going to move off this topic now because I can rant about this for hours. So it is now 2019, and the surviving families are still searching. Like I said, Janice did a interview. She does lots of interviews. She is still searching for her daughter. She is still actively holding rallies. She is holding, like, memory circles. Every anniversary that comes around, she gathers people in a local park to hold candles and talk about their memories of Stacy and Suzanne and Cheryl and beg for information. She is out there. She and other people run multiple Facebook groups where people can go and leave anonymous information, where people can just talk about their memories and their own ideas on the case. Like, they are on it. Janice actually said in an interview that she doesn't have enough grandchildren. She has multiple grandchildren, multiple little kids that she adores from her other children. However, she knows that Stacy wanted a family. She loved kids. She was always the happy, would do anything for you kind of person, and she loved kids, and that was one of her biggest dreams, was to go on and have a family. And so she just flat out said, I don't have enough grandchildren because I never got to see Stacy's children and live that moment with my youngest baby daughter. And it was just heartbreaking. Like, I about cried, and I'm about to cry now. That interview was a lot. Now, moving on from the sappy stuff, because I'm literally about to cry. As for the theories, obviously Dustin and Michael are still, to this day, considered suspects. The police truly, truly believe that they could very possibly have something to do with this. I mean, think about the fact that Susie was set to testify at their trial. Michael was overheard saying that he hopes the women are dead. Like, it could be them. We know this. Susie's brother, Bart, Could also be considered a suspect. I know that the police ruled him out. You can't really discount the fact that he did have alcohol abuse issues and he did have a very rocky past that did include some major animosity towards the women. And as well as the fact that now this information, everyone online says it is not related, and I don't think it's related. However, if you Google this case, pretty much every story that pops up is about the fact that recently, actually just in March, Bart was arrested for trying to kidnap a young girl from a local nail salon. Now, like I said, I don't think it's related. I'm just saying it's a little suspicious that just 27 years after, he does have a, basically, inkling of feeling a need to kidnap young girls. I don't know. I don't know if it matters, but I figured if you Google this case, that's pretty much everything that you see right now, so I figured I would go ahead and add it in and let you guys make your full decisions based off all the information. Now, some people on the internet have brought up a very interesting theory that I happen to be quite partial to. It's based on the idea that maybe this was someone that Cheryl had been dating. Now, obviously, she had been divorced for 3 years, so it's not exactly crazy to think that she would have been dating at this point. I mean, her daughter was grown, she was about to leave the house, maybe she was starting to explore the idea of, meeting someone new. Obviously, pretty much the only people that would really know about a new budding relationship would be Cheryl and Suzanne, so nobody is really able to, say, oh yeah, she was definitely starting to date somebody, I heard her talking about this person. No one can say that. However, like I said, she had been divorced for 3 years from her second husband, so it's not crazy to think it. And perhaps this wasn't somebody who was the best character. This is totally unreliable information. However, after snooping around the Facebook pages for a little while, I came across some information from a couple of people talking about the fact that Cheryl had recently been seen by a few close friends interacting with a group of people who weren't necessarily the best. I couldn't find a whole lot of information because it was kind of just like a couple of random comments from people. And obviously this was 27 years ago, so kind of take it with a grain of salt. However, there were some rumblings that maybe she had been hanging out with a little bit of a seedy crowd. Also, since the girls weren't even supposed to be at Cheryl's house, maybe this was just a wrong place, wrong time type of situation. Maybe someone was there to hurt Cheryl. Maybe she had just recently broken off with somebody and they were angry. Maybe someone was in love with her and was stalking her. Who knows? But maybe somebody was there for Cheryl and was trying to hurt her, and the girls walked in on it or surprised him and he ended up having to take all three. Who knows? However, I do think it is a plausible situation just based on the fact that the girls weren't even supposed to be there, so I think it's a very possible situation that the girls were collateral damage. And then, of course, we have Robert Cox. So obviously I finished up my face. Sorry. Had to do the things that I can't really talk and, put on makeup at the same time. He is by far the most believable suspect. He is definitely the internet's favorite suspect. Honestly, he's probably the easiest. He is still considered, to this day, the police's main suspect. I mean, he has already shown a pattern of very violent behavior to women. He worked with Stacy's father. There's very much a high possibility that he saw her one day at work and was like, yep, that's the girl I want. That's the girl I'm gonna murder next. Like, you never know what's going through this crazy man's mind. He's definitely the most believable suspect, and he's the theory that I'm most partial to that has an actual basis to it. Now, obviously, I'm fairly partial to the wrong place, wrong time theory, but for the theories that actually have real evidence behind them and real sustenance to them, this is definitely my favorite theory. But that is all the information that I have on today's case. It has been 27 years since these women went missing. I truly hope that anybody that has information decides to come forward. Any little piece of information could help this case. You never know if you are holding a tiny little piece of information that is the key to unlocking everything. If you know anything, if you know anybody that could possibly know anything, if you know anybody that was in or around Springfield around 1992, start looking. See if there's anything that you could let police know. There are plenty of forums online that you can leave anonymous tips that the police look at, that they will get that information to the police. If you so choose, I will link a couple of petitions down below trying to get the Springfield Police to at least do some sort of ground core sampling of the hospital parking lot. I really think that they're down there, unfortunately, and I really wish they would at least do the sampling just to kind of, if it's not them, just put it aside and, you know, maybe they can move on. I don't know, but I'll leave those petitions down below in case you are interested in signing them as well. 27 years. That baffles me that 3 grown women can disappear and there's no trace of them for 27 years. Maybe police know more than they're saying. I mean, obviously this is still an open investigation and they are not going to share everything that they know, so maybe they know everything and they're just building a case. I hope that's what it is, but I just, 27 years with no trace, that's one of those things that terrifies me, and I think that's why I hold on to cases like these so much, is because I truly don't understand how a human being can disappear with absolutely no trace. Like, that baffles me, you know? But anyways, that is everything that I have on the Springfield 3 case. As always, I will list all of my resources down below, as well as link and list all the makeup that I used today in case you're curious. I hope you guys will hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. I know I'm inconsistent with them, but I hope to get more consistent with them and do them better. I'm trying every day, guys. But I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye.